Welcome to What's the Scenario with PLRB, where we explore claims and coverage scenarios relevant to insurance professionals. I'm Brennan McLaughlin.
Hey, Brennan, I'm Mike Brode.
And I'm Tonda Lee.
Yay, Tonda's back again.
All right.
Yes.
So, Brennan, I think I'm supposed to ask, what's the scenario today? What are we talking
All right. Sod's Country Farms was raising 65,000 chickens
about?
when a fire burned down the poultry house.
Ooh.
After a detailed investigation, the cause of the fire was undetermined. To further complicate matters, Sod's Country Farms didn't even own the chickens themselves, but raised them for a vendor. They want to know if the property loss of the animals is covered and what policy would be most appropriate. So before we jump into this, I got a little bit of a trivia for you here. Chickens, we talked about how they might be technically dinosaurs. What can't chickens do? Is it dream, fly, sweat, or see colors humans can't see? What do you think?
Can I go off the board?
Yeah, sure.
Apparently.
Oh, my gosh. No.
I'm trying something different. They cannot cross the road without being hit. That's what I think.
No, that's a classic. I'm going to go with they cannot. Ooh, this is a tricky one. They cannot sweat.
All right.
I'm going to go with, I'll be weird. I'm going to go with dream. Chickens can't dream, and it's a shame because they should be able to dream.
About flying away.
Right.
The chicken coop.
Well, Tonda, you got it today. Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding,
Believe it or not, chickens can dream. They don't get a big a movie like Babe the Pig, or they have big city dreams, but they apparently can dream and they can fly as well, which is surprising. Apparently, see colors humans can't see is only surprising to me. That's pretty weird, but apparently they're able to see a little bit of ultraviolet. So,
good for them.
Yeah.
Brendan, before you go on, because I can't get past this. How do we know that chickens dream? Do you talk to them? Say, did you have a nightmare there? Chicken? How do you know a chicken dreams?
Well, I think they sketch it when they wake up. You get them a little those ink pads and they a little bit of paper and they sketch whatever they dreamed about.
Right.
I don't really know. Maybe it's an eye movement thing.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good question, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's head into our scenario.
Ooh.
All right. So we were talking about these contract growers who are raising chickens for a vendor. Yeah.
Very weird.
I would like to learn to start off more about these contract farmers. Brennan, Mike, can you share anything with the audience about what that entails?
Yeah, Brennan, what are these? Contract farmer? I mean, it's not my chickens. Got 65,000 of them flying around. What's going on here? Dreaming, causing all sorts of chaos.
About flying away.
Right.
Yeah. No, this originated with a question from one of our members, and really interesting because when you think of a farmer raising livestock, you think that it's their animals. They're doing this work with them day in, day out. But contract growing is actually a pretty common structure. There's sort of a power dynamic where the vendors have a lot of control on the individual farmers are taking on these chickens, doing the day-to-day work, providing a safe place to live and raising them, feeding them, all that stuff. But there could be a complex relationship, and that might get tested when you have a loss like this.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that leads to kind of my next question, which is when you do have a loss, what type of policy would respond? The property policy, the liability policy, both? Or is there something in the industry that is specifically made for these types of claims in relationships?
Yeah. We'll tackle liability next week in this sort of scenario.
Ooh, can't wait.
I think that's the more common situation. These folks didn't own the poultry. For now, we're going to set liability aside and assume that the insured bore some insurable interest here. And we're going to look at the property loss aspect of this.
All right. We're landing the property.
Yeah. Specifically, we'll assume that they only have a standard BOP policy. So let's start there. Looking at the ISO BP 0003-0110. And under that form, it provides some limited coverage for animals. Under this edition, the policy contains a property not covered provision for animals, but then there's two exceptions. The first is for...
I was saying right there what I'm reading, unless I'm reading it wrong. I don't see any coverage for these animals, chickens, yet. If chicken is an animal.
Dreaming chickens.
An animal is...
Yeah. When you're looking at property not covered animals, you could just shut it and throw it away.
Right, I'm done.
But except if you look at the next word, which is unless. So unless owned by others and boarded by you, or if owned by you, blah, blah, blah. I mean, in this case, if owned by you, only as stock while inside of buildings. But if, in this case, animals weren't owned by this insured.
Right. Yeah.
So we're looking at that first clause. Yeah.
And there seems like there's two requirements there. If you look at it, has to be owned by others and boarded by you.
Yeah.
So what does boarded mean?
Exactly, Tanda. What kind of boarders are these? These
boarding chickens?
Exactly. What's going on here? They pay you a penny and they can board in your place, and do we provide them with food or what's going on? I don't understand this whole boarding thing.
Yeah, they're couch surfing, dreaming on the couch.
Right.
Right. So we had some of our coverage team look at this question of, hey, is there any way to get coverage under a BOP policy like this? And you know, the owned by you, owned by others, I don't think that's really in dispute. So it really is falling on that word, boarded.
Boarded.
Yeah. So we looked at Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, defining boarding, you know, when using it as a verb, to provide with regular meals and also often lodging, usually for compensation.
All right.
So I guess the chickens themselves aren't paying, so but there is compensation going.
Right.
They are lodging and they are getting regular meals. They're being fed and housed, you know. So I guess when I think of boarding, I think of being fed and housed.
There you go.
So I think there is a possibility for coverage here. But the tricky thing here is if you have a BOP policy and you were a contract grower and, you know, you had a loss, suddenly you're putting a lot on Merriam-Webster, right? You've got to take that into a court and have a judge agree with that argument. So
and why would that be, Brennan? Because it isn't on quotations, which means it's not defined by the policy. So then we got to figure out where we got to go. So yeah, we got to go to a judge and
the principles of interpretation. Right. And again, if there aren't anything conflicting in there, then we go to, well, how is it used in kind of common parlance?
Right.
And for that, you know, the courts go ahead and consult with the dictionary. So I think I would be comfortable making that argument and saying, hey, this is how the dictionary defines boarding. Right. But what I really wanted to emphasize, though, is I would love to get my hands on that contract between the vendor who's boarding these chickens and the actual owner. I would love to see what that says. What terminology are they using?
Right.
Is there any risk transfer between the two of them? Are there any insurance requirements in there that might come into play? What type of insurance does the owner of the chickens have to cover them? Because, you know, most policies also include some type of other insurance clause. Could there be some overlaps from pro rata sharing or something like that going on? So I would start really breaking down that relationship and looking at that contract to make sure I have a good grasp on the responsibility of both of those parties.
Blowing my mind, Tonda. There you go. Yeah. Ooh.
Great.
I was going to bring up something related but unrelated, Brennan. Maybe we can do a part 2 to this. Because in quotations was the word stock. So if they were owned by you in their stock, so yeah, I'd be curious, are these chicken stock or are they only stock once you turn them into chicken stock and put them into a can?
When they stop dreaming.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's that we didn't cover that because it was not owned, but that is we should check that out.
All right, part 2.
Yeah. As for Todd, I'm really glad the contract thing came up because that's a huge part of this. Definitely getting that contract is key in any contract grower case. We're going to get into that a little bit more next week with the liability as well and cover some of those things you mentioned. So it's really good that we got to mention it today too.
Yeah.
I do wonder, Brennan, to build on Tonda's statement, now that my mind is back together and it's not blown anymore. I'm curious. I mean, the BOP, you don't think of a BOP when you're thinking of like farming operations and chickens. I'm thinking like a farm owner's policy or something. I just wonder if is there another policy that might be better than nothing's better than the BOP because it's like my favorite policy, but could there be another policy that someone could use and not the BOP, maybe?
Absolutely. I mean, and, this scenario, part of the purpose of it is to help an adjuster who's, maybe getting into farming losses to notice, how the more conventional policies might fall short. So you're resting, this huge loss. If you just had a BOP policy, you'd be resting on the interpretation of a word and bringing it into court. So if you're a contract grower, you probably want to have more tailored coverage. And I can show some examples, or talk about some examples. We'll, for example, there's a farm property coverage form, FB 00100994. But we're not going to get into it too deep, but poultry is covered under that form, under scheduled farm personal property coverage, as long as they're in the open or any building designated for poultry in the declarations. So already you can see how the policy, is thinking about, hey, they've got to be either out in the open or in a building designated for that. It's thinking about how are these farms set up. And you'll see in this particular example, we looked at it's specifically excluded under unscheduled farm personal property. So that's the policy kind of thinking about, okay, you're going to really need to schedule this and define what you've got here.
Right.
Yep. Very important.
You know what would be fun, Brennan, is like take my house where we have like 10 chickens running around inside. And you're like, well, that's a residential dwelling. Wasn't designed for chickens. Some are, well, yeah, we have a chicken room in our house that is designed specifically for chickens. That would be another fun fight to have with the courts.
Yeah, and we can go back to that other podcast episode we had about the chicken coop that was attached to the side of your house.
Oh, yeah, that we could roll around. Yeah, that's what we do in summer. Yeah, it's cold here in Columbus right now. So, yeah, chickens are all inside now.
Yeah, so, the declarations page and how you define those spaces and how you define, the poultry itself, coverage under this form. Coverage of poultry is excluded if special is marked on the declarations page for the applicable coverage type. So we're really leaning on the declarations page. Really want to get that declarations page and see how it breaks down in some of these more complex commercial agricultural losses.
Yeah.
And Mike will be very happy to hear in this form, poultry is in quotes, and it is defined as fowl kept by you for use or sale. So kept by is a little bit.
There you go.
Yeah.
Not owned, but kept.
Not owned and not boarded. Less complex meaning going on in there. But yeah, there's endorsements. There's contract growers. There's suffocation forms that get even more specific.
That doesn't sound very fun. Hey,
well, in these situations, you've got a ton of creatures in a small space. Ventilation. Suffocation becomes hugely important.
Oh, wow.
Good point. I'll have to check my bedroom, our chicken room, make sure that we have plenty of ventilation for those.
Absolutely.
Chickens run around up there, yes.
And maybe is there a smell associated with chickens? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I lost my sense of smell years ago, but who knows? When you come over and visit, you can tell me.
There you go.
Oh, I had a question. We got 65,000, not one or two, not 10 like I have here. 65,000 chickens. Not quite sure who. Well, we think we know who owns them. We're boarding them. how would you ever think about like valuation of these here 65,000 chickens? And is there salvage? Can you turn them into chicken soup or stock, or
Oh, that's
they're just gone?
right.
Don, I gotta ask, but
Hey, stock, there you go.
right.
But this raises a really important question
I'm sure it does. That's why I asked
complexity.
it, Brennan.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just how much more complex these claims can get. Are you calculating the value as the chickens are slaughtered or as they're alive? There's the impact of the delay to market. There's the age of the chickens. What was the age prior to the loss? Are you looking at their weight, their market category? You look at industry pricing. You can imagine looking at local auctions. There's a lot to think about, and this is where the issue that you raised, Tonda, comes in. Typically, the contract or sometimes the policy will just resolve these issues for you.
Yeah.
This policy that I looked at it says for covered poultry, the limit of insurance per bird under any provision of this coverage form applicable to poultry will be its cash market value as of time of loss. That doesn't necessarily end all the complications and stuff you have to look into, but you'll at least get some guidance from the contract or the policy on these issues because they've thought about these things.
Because me, I'd argue everything, Ton. I can't help myself. I'm sorry. But yeah, we get to that time, right? So their cash value at that time, and I would be like, well, what do you know what time, Brennan, that this chicken actually perished in this fire? So I think I get more money because it was this time, and you'll be arguing, no, it was that time. And they were fighting again. That's the wonder of insurance claims. I won't say fighting. We're having a valid discussion over valuation with two differing opinions as to what value could be because of the timing. So you're right. Even when you try to clarify it, still can be complex. It's fascinating to me.
And I was just going to highlight the importance of, you're thinking about valuation of the situation, make sure you keep the perspective of whose value, because I think that the value to the owner, who arguably is the one who's going to benefit from the sale of the chicken and the processing of the chicken, might be different from the value of the contract grower.
Yeah.
So is their value the contract price because they're no longer able to have that chicken in order to fulfill that contract, whereas the value for the owner might be different. And that brings me to my second issue then, would both be able to recover for their loss under that policy? Or is that policy only limited to recovery by arguably the name insured, the contract grower or farmer? So I would just make sure that, I'm looking at all those issues when I'm dealing with this type of claim.
And what about my emotional distress, Tonda? That covered in there. I lost all these chickens. It was catastrophic.
That's for another day. That might be like a few weeks from here when we get to that.
That's part 3 of this chicken claim. Can't wait.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take it to some key takeaways. All right. So our key takeaways here: contract growing is a common arrangement in the agricultural industry.
Yeah, who knew? Who knew, Amazing.
So this is where the farmer is raising the chickens, but they're not the actual owner. Insurance policies often need to adapt to these specific needs, as more general policies, such as the BOP, would fall short. And endorsements and specific policies are underwritten to make room for these losses. So this is where you're going to want to get that, talk to the agent. The agent is going to connect the insured with the proper policy. And as an adjuster, you're going to want to take a close look at what endorsements are attached to the specific policy, and just make sure you're looking at the right policy that's for this loss.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Mike, where can an adjuster go to find more?
Well, they can listen to this podcast over and over and over again, and that would be somewhere on the Education Hub, which would be awesome. But we also have some policy annotations that's on the legal side, and there it is, this podcast episode highlighted. So yes, once again, I'll say, listen not only to this one, but at least every one that Tonda's been on, because they've been fabulous. So just saying, at least the last few weeks, you definitely want to check those out. But always, Brennan, go out to plrb.org, check out all of our, look at any tab out there. What if you want to look at weather? What was the weather like for those chickens before that fire started? Maybe it has something to go happen to it. Maybe there was lightning out there. That's what fire. So do your own investigation. You can do all that fun stuff at plrb.org. Check it out.
Absolutely. I'll take these key points and put them into the show notes. You'll also find links to our social media. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us, and give us a call at 630-509-8704 and leave a voicemail to share your adjuster story.
Or, before we jump away, this wasn't a phone call this time, but this was actually a member outreach anyway.
Ooh.
So there's multiple ways you could get up with us to give us a scenario to go over. So, but we would love a
Absolutely.
phone call, wouldn't we? Wouldn't we,
We
Tyler?
would.
Now, bye, everybody.
Bye.
We'll see you next time. The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies and counsel as appropriate.